everyone, it's time to get real. I'm Ron Cantor, the president of GODTV, GODTV's Hebrew-speaking gospel channel in Israel. And Get Real is the podcast where we get real with faith leaders about their lives and the issues surrounding us. So if you're tired of cookie-cutter interviews, this is the place for you. And today, we're going to get real with Ben and Jodie Hughes. Hey!
G'day, mate. So good to be with you.
Did you say good day, mate?
I said g'day, mate.
Is that English?
It's the real English.
Okay, so the real English, down under.
Yes.
Except you're not from Australia, are you, Ben?
Well, I grew up in New Zealand, but I was actually born in Australia, so I'm confused.
He's really Australian.
Okay.
So I'm very much both. Very much both.
But you are from Australia, right, Jodie?
I am, yes.
How did you guys meet?
Wow, we met at YWAM, which stands for Youth with a Mission. It's a missionary organization.
Well, let's be honest, it's the largest missionary organization in the history of the universe.
It is, it's pretty amazing. So we both went there individually, met, and, that was the end of the story.
And how did you come to faith?
Well, it's very different.
It's only a 30-minute show.
It's really different for both of us because I grew up in the Salvation Army, which in Australia is very much a church.
Wait a minute, didn't I see you on Christmas? You were at the Walmart? Was that you? You had a little bell?
Yes, me and my family.
Once upon a time,
Yeah, so I grew up in church.
Wow, William Booth, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, actually, the history is amazing. I love the history of the Salvation Army. But so I always knew about God, but knowing about God is much different than knowing God.
Yes.
And then also coming to your own place of believing in the realness of who God is and stripping back unnecessary religion or processes and, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And getting to that place of just trusting God and believing God was a long journey for me.
Right.
But yeah, I always knew God.
And Ben, your story's a bit more heavy, right?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up knowing God. I'd heard of Jesus, but and I had a praying grandmother. Thank God for praying grandmothers. But I had a really hard time growing up. I was bullied severely a lot at school. I got beaten up.
Now you're a pretty big, strong guy.
I wasn't always 6'2" and built like the Rock. That wasn't always the case. But I did really get bullied severely, and with that, of course, as you can imagine, comes rejection and hopelessness
and shame.
Yeah.
So by the age of 14, I was already heavily abusing alcohol, and I was just doing everything I could to try and fit in. I'd get blind, pass out drunk, And ultimately that led, I was invited to go to a Christian camp in New Zealand, in the Bay of Islands. It was in the middle of a farm, which was hours from anywhere, dirt roads, and it was a sheep station for the rest of the year. They would share sheep, big sheep farm, and they'd convert this barn into a meeting place just for 1 week a year. And I remember sitting on a hay bale in that barn, and a preacher just shared the gospel, the good news of the gospel, and said that Jesus was alive, that he loves me, that he had a plan for my life, and all I had to do was say yes to him. And so right there, standing in the dirt and the hay that night, I gave my life to Jesus at 15 years old.
Wow.
And I had an encounter with the tangible love of God. I physically felt the presence of God fill my entire body. And Ron, I woke up the next day a brand new person. Like, I don't say that just religiously, I woke up a completely different person. And I felt like I could fly. I honestly felt like I could fly. And I knew from that day, the whole world needed to know that Jesus was alive. I was in a barn in New Zealand. They say that New Zealand is the furthest place from Jerusalem on earth. Like, it's the ends of the earth. Here I am in a barn on a farm, the ends of the earth. And I see Jesus, I meet Jesus, and he's alive, he's powerful. I've encountered him, and I knew that day that the whole world needed to know about him as well.
Yeah, and you are an evangelist. I've been watching you all week film, and you can't get through a broadcast without going for souls. And, my story, which I won't go into other than we were talking the other day, everything was brighter. I wasn't born again, and then I was, and colors came alive.
Right.
Yeah,
Life was, and you were saying the same thing. That was my experience.
Yeah.
Now you are in ministry together. You're on TV together. You do Facebook Live together. That's
we live together.
You do. That is amazing. You even live together. What don't you do?
It's incredible.
Now, That's scary to me because I remember as a new believer, I watch like a husband and wife on TV, and I'm like, come on, I know you guys fight. I know that, like, how do you deal with, and it's called Get Real for a reason. Yeah. Because I want to speak to real people with real problems. Listen, I'm married. I love my wife. She loves me. But if I told you that it's been perfect, it's been easy, that there's never been conflict, my nose would grow bigger than it already is. But when you minister together, the need to be in unity, it's just a whole nother level. I can be upset at my wife or her upset at me, and I can be on a stage and minister the gospel, and then, we'll eventually get it. But you're together. How do you keep it together?
Yeah, in realness.
I want to see which one would answer first.
Through your eyes.
Shut up.
Now, look, we've been married for 23 years, and I think about it like this. We have to continually say yes. You have to continually prefer one another. We definitely fight. We're both very strong personalities.
Both strong.
And so, as you can expect, there's conflict and, there's harmony as well. But
every now and then.
That's right. Just like our relationship with the Lord, I think, we continually say yes to not that we fight with God, but, there's this continual yes, there's this continual laying down of your life. And even every now and again, when your flesh rises up and you want to demand your own, your rights, that's what happens. It's like, no, I want this. But eventually, of course, it has to be, no, I'm going to choose each other. I prefer to lay down my life, to apologize, This is usually me. It's me, of course, that does the apologizing, But this is what it means. It's just being able to continually...
It's him that needs to do the apologizing.
Of course.
Right. Just like after this interview, when I'll have to apologize.
That will be your fault as well.
I think, though, we often say with our daughter that, people will ask us, because she ministers with us, travels with us, and we have a spiritual daughter that now travels with us as well. But people will say, what's some tips? And we will often say, we've tried to make sure that our daughter was in the presence of God more than the rubbish of ministry or the hard stuff. And I think it's probably fair to say with our journey, because, we've fought like crazy many times and often, but we've made a priority individually and together that we want to be in the presence of God. And somehow when you hate each other in those moments and you come into the presence of God, God does a real work in your heart, and you can't help but shake off some of the stuff in
So
His
people
presence.
think that a successful marriage is the absence of conflict. Now, God bless those people. I wouldn't mind one day being that couple. Yeah. But you don't know if that's really success or not, or maybe that's just one person going along with something that they know is wrong, but they're compliant. Now, in my situation, my lovely, beautiful, wonderful Israeli wife. Now, if you've ever been to Israel, I lived there. There is no word in the Hebrew dictionary for submit.
Wow.
And when the closest word is lihikana, which means to surrender, which is really, it's close, but it's not the same thing. So when we got married and, we're going through these concepts, she was a new believer and I was relatively new. Yeah. And I was a power hungry, arrogant, thought I could do anything, control freak. And she was this strong-willed Israeli who's like, submit? What does that even mean? So we have certainly gone through, and you said it, Ben, it's you got to get to the place where two strong-willed people are choosing to prefer the other in order for it to succeed.
Yeah. Right. And to get rid of the word perfectionism, because I don't think there's a perfect way through that. There's just a real way through it. And to be real with each other, to learn to have the real conversations. I'm thinking of, I love that whole deal of iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. For us, that has been the case, because even though we are both strong people, I think that strength, once we get to that place of being together on something, has actually made both of us better. And so there is a benefit to both being strong, which I hope is an encouragement to some people. Right. And I think you make each other stronger.
Well, you really get the benefit of two, rather than one dominating and the other one just going along, so to speak, then you've only ever got the benefit of one set of strengths and, wisdom and things like that. But when there's two, we really are. I mean, because we do duke it out at times, you know what I mean? Like we're really kind of, but it's always been like that. But, and there is opportunity for division to happen, but when I think for both of us, when you've made a choice that we're committed to one another, there's things that we've gone through, and we've been through some pretty heavy things, I think, like most people. But there's been times where even at the beginning of those things where we've taken each other's hand and we've just gone, you know what? No matter what happens, we're staying together.
Yeah.
We're coming through this together.
I will tell you, Ben said that to me. There was one time where everything was going crazy, There wasn't one area of our life that was going well. And I remember Ben walked up to me one day and he did exactly that. He grabbed my hand and he said, Jodie, no matter what, we're staying together.
Wow.
And it was one of those moments that actually brought such, I want to say peace, but it was more than that. I just suddenly felt secure.
Right.
I was like, our lives are like blowing up right now, but we're not going to blow up right now. And it was just that honest moment of not ignoring the stuff, but going, whatever happens here, whether we lose our home, lose everything, like it doesn't actually matter. We're going to be okay.
Amen. That's awesome.
It was powerful.
You are ministering to people right now because I know, not because I'm a prophet, but because I'm a human, that there are people watching all over the world who are going through real life, real marriage issues. My parents, I love my parents. I never saw them fight. Wow. I never saw them have conflict. Now, part of the reason is my dad is just, for the first many years of my life, he just didn't have an opinion. My mom made all the decisions and he was fine with that. Now, the fun part, so when I got married, and I'm married to the strong-willed Israeli, and I am this very strong-willed, self-assured, young American Jewish believer. And we had conflict. I felt so condemned.
Wow.
I said, here I am a believer. My parents are unbelievers, and they have a perfect marriage, and I have a horrible marriage. Speak to people who are going through conflict. Why should they have hope?
Well,
by the way, let me just say this about my dad. He's now 82. My mom is 80, and they fight now, and I love it. I love to watch them fight.
That's nice.
It's not. He found
it's real.
Right. He found his voice about 65, and he finally got just a little bit ornery. And we're like, "Come on, Dad, And my mom likes it, and it's just fun to watch them bicker. It certainly makes me feel better. But it's real life. But speak to folks who are going through maybe some difficulty right now, feeling that they have a bad marriage.
I think there's hope to be found in the fact that problems can be solved. Problems are solvable, and also that God truly is the God of the impossible. And it's so, I don't say that just as a minister, as a preacher, but I say that as a Christian, as a believer, that God is the God who does impossible things. And why that's important is because sometimes we feel like, you know what, this situation's impossible, so I'm bailing. I'm out. It's impossible. But there's times, many times, where I've prayed, and it's like, God, you are the God of the impossible. This is a wall. This looks like an impossible, unscalable wall in front of us, but you are the God who does impossible things. And so being able to come to relationship stuff, being able to come to some of those things that cause relationship stress, finance, all of these different kind of things that can truly just bring, when you know that God is the God of the impossible, and sometimes it's just a matter of actually holding on. I believe, Ron, with all my heart, that a lot of times we don't see miracles because we actually don't give God a chance. We actually bail. We bail on giving God a chance, and the whole Hagar type situation. Like Abraham's got this promise, as we know, with Sarah, and he's like, God, it's not happening, so I'm going to bail and I'm going to go with Hagar. And I think so, and I often talk about this. I'm like, leave Hagar alone. Give God a chance to do the miracle.
Right.
But being real in your own heart too. Like I'm a big believer that there's no point being, a minister, husband and wife, whatever, if it's not real in your own heart.
Right.
And when something hurts, it hurts. We don't need to pretend to God that something hasn't hurt. We don't need to pretend to each other that something hasn't hurt. And we can come to God and do a real journey with God. So in the context of marriage, if something hurts, it's okay to go to God and say, God, I need help right now, and I need healing in my heart. And to do the journey with God first, and usually he'll start to highlight things that you can work on, apologize for, forgive, but coming into a place of realness, because I think so many of us treat God as a distant God and forget that we can just come to him in our arguments and even say, God, I don't know what to do, help me. And I can't tell you how many times we've done that, where I've literally gone, God, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And being fake in ministry, what's the point?
What is the point?
We're trying to minister to people.
Yeah.
We're trying to help them.
Yeah.
But often, sadly, it's a performance. And at the end of the day, we can't fool God.
Yeah.
God is not fooled. He's not tricked. He's not going, oh, what? Oh, you have problems. I didn't know. You look so good. He knows everything, and eventually it's all going to be revealed anyways. So why not use our challenges and difficulties to help other people? You know, I want to go back to what you said, that Ben said to you, no matter what, we're not giving up. The reason that is so important, and that can apply to all of our relationships. Yeah. Now, the marriage relationship is deeper covenant than, say, your best friend or other friends. But even in those relationships, when you say, you know, I've had relationships where I thought, there's enough conflict that it might be over. And it turned out not to be over. But there's something so powerful when you say, no matter what, we're not giving up. We're there for each other. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you a question. Yeah. And I'm going to do so on the other side of the break. I want to give you time to think about it. I want you to tell me a real story of real conflict in your life and how you resolved it. And when we come back, we're going to continue talking to Ben and Jodie Hughes. But first, take a look at this.
Get faith-focused content for every part of life, with hundreds of videos, articles, and more.
Welcome to our Monday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth.
Do you know there's a spiritual atmosphere that affects your very life?
God Daily has you covered no matter what season of life you're in.
More breakthroughs for you are coming. He's not a God that is restrained in power. He is a God of all power and all might.
Sign up today at GODTV.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Get Real. I'm sitting with Ben and Jodie Hughes, and before the break, I told you that I was going to ask them about a very real story about conflict. Now, you might notice there is a fire behind us because at Get Real, we really want to turn on the heat.
Turn the heat up.
So I apologize for the fire, which is real, by the way.
The fire's great.
It's great. Tell us a real story of conflict that you overcame.
Oh gosh, we have so many.
You know, one of our first and biggest fights ever actually was when we were pretty newly married, and it was, you know, which side of the sink should the knife and fork drawer be?
Yeah,
you know? And I was like, you know, we're going to wash the dishes this way. The drawer should be on this side. I hope you
stood your ground, Ben, for the sake of all men everywhere.
Right, but you know, that turned into one of the biggest blow-ups.
It was terrible.
You know, we kind of made a decision that we don't make decisions, big decisions, you know, without us both agreeing. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like a foundation right there. Like we don't, none of us just, okay, we're going to do this.
We'll have peace on it. We'll wait until we both have peace. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So because of that.
What if you had a big decision to make and one had peace and one didn't?
We don't
we don't make it until we're both at the same. So that means that there's often conflict.
Yeah.
You know, while we are fighting that out, and eventually, of course, I realize I'm wrong. No, I'm just kidding, you know? but honestly, that's been a foundation for us that I can honestly say
that has grown though. Like in the early years, it took us a while to get to that place, and that's usually where we ended up in more disasters because we wouldn't wait on the other person to have peace about something.
Yeah. Have you ever been ready to go on air and you were mad at each other?
You heard me before. Yes, recently.
I cheated.
Recently, we were doing a show, and I don't even know what we'd been arguing about, but we were arguing. And anyway, the show starts, and here we are, you know, the whole production crew is there, we're chatting. We got into the second show, and literally the producer stopped the show.
Oh, wow.
And said, you two need to start chatting to each other, and I'm not sure what's going on, but the usual feel is not here. And, you know, we're just like, we're not even looking at each other.
Everything is fine.
We're like doing a show without even looking in each other's eyes. And then, yeah, we had to literally take a moment, walk outside and say, look, I'm sorry. I don't know how we're going to resolve all of these things we're talking about, but I'm sorry. And come to that moment of peace, because now it was affecting everything.
Yeah.
Well, since we're getting real and the fire is on, I actually married a couple as a minister.
Wow.
I performed the ceremony. It was actually the rehearsal. It was the rehearsal, not that the marriage was the next day. But I went through the whole thing and my wife and I were not speaking to each other.
Oh my gosh.
And this was a while ago. It was over 20 years ago. But I remember just feeling so stupid. I am performing a ceremony and talking about, now you can never give up and you got to work things through. I can't stand you. But yeah, that's...
Or you can do a sermon at church and just aim your comments right at your partner.
Yes, one could do that. I would never do it, but one could, yes.
Like you were saying, though, you know, especially as ministers, you know, you want it to be authentic, you want it to be real.
Yes.
And you can't truly minister to somebody until you've dealt with this stuff in your own heart.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that does look like, so when we're in that place of conflict, eventually it will come to that place where you've just got to genuinely say sorry, you know, and it's without condition. Do you know what I mean? That's the most important thing, that it's an unconditional apology.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not giving any of your own, but this, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're such an idiot, you know what I mean? There's none of that. It's just, you know, being able to get to that place where you know it's up to you and you've got to do your part, you know what I mean?
And to something we do a lot in more recent years. I mean, this stuff you learn, right? You start out and go, how the heck is this going to work? And God teaches you things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But we have learned in more recent years to say sorry without having a solution.
Right.
Because sometimes we've wanted to hold out, you know, the sorry or the conversation until we can work out, well, whose side are we going to pick here? What decision are we going to make? And we've had to learn to just say sorry without the answers.
Right.
So that we can short circuit the tension and at least bring a connection of our hearts back together without having to say, I can't have peace with your heart without working out what we're going to do to move forward. It's a lie to think you can't have peace without a solution.
Right.
Because that's just not true. You can have peace based on I'm committed to you and I'm sorry, I don't really know what we're going to do next, but I want peace with your heart.
Very good.
You know, and it's the same as when we become a Christian, you know, we lay down our lives. When you give your life to Jesus, you give your life to Jesus. But we do it in a way that knowing that he gives back so much more. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't just, even though we lay down our own desires and things like that, we do have God, and we have God in the midst of our marriage, knowing that I can humble myself, I can lay everything down, knowing the goodness of God, that he always, and it's not just to sound religious, but he's always going to bless us. He's always going to bring us into places where we feel fulfilled, and we somehow, it's even better. You know, he gives us the desires of our heart, especially when we lay them down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So true.
Hey, before we go, we're running out of time here. How can people learn more about you?
Yeah.
Well, our ministry is called Pour It Out Ministries, and our website is pouritout.org. And that's the easiest way. Yeah.
And do you have a newsletter they can sign up for?
Absolutely. Yep, right there. Pouritout.org, little pop-up. And we send out regular newsletters and just amazing reports of what God is doing.
And of course, every Saturday night, you are on Facebook Live on the GODTV page.
Yes.
That is at what time?
That's at 7 p.m. Central Texas time. That's called Gather. And also on our website, there's
So just to be clear, that would be 8 p.m. Eastern for most of the United States.
Right.
8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central.
Yeah.
And you can go to pourit.tv, and we have a whole bunch of TV shows and the different media things that we do is all on that
But on
website.
Gather, we just pray with people as well. Release words, release healing, be real.
Right, and then
Yeah.
I know that, I've only met you guys recently, but Ward Simpson, president of GODTV. He's always talking about you guys, always talking about Ben and Jodie and what a blessing they are, and the Facebook Live, and people are getting healed. So, friends, I want to encourage you to on Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, go to GODTV's Facebook page. And is it called the Ben and Jodie Show?
It's called Gather.
Gather. Well, that's more humble. Gather. So make sure you go to the GODTV Facebook page. The world needs Jesus more than ever. And the reason GODTV is here is to be media missionaries, is to go. GODTV is on in India, in Africa, all over Europe, on in the U.S., and we are seeking to reach people with the message that Jesus is the Messiah. He can change your life like he changed Ben's life, Jodie's life. He radically changed my life almost 40 years ago. If you need eternal life right now and you just stumbled on this program, just right now, just cry out to Jesus and ask him into your life. Well, that is all the time that we have today. Again, I'm Ron Cantor from Shalano TV, the Hebrew-speaking gospel channel in Israel. If you want to learn more about that, go to shalano.tv. Watch them TV in Hebrew. It'll blow your mind. But until next time, I'm Ron Cantor. I bless you. Shalom.